But when you have to say explain creativity of the process, you have to go into neuroscience and physics. So that's what I want to get into, because we have to get into brain-mind dynamic in order to explain creativity as a process. Since it's been around, initially thought the brain was the mind, then it thought the brain created the mind, and now they really don't know what's going on. Because it's clear that the mind is cognitive, the brain is physical. They are two completely independent and separate entities that are working together. They don't know what's going on, because you need to have also physics involved in with starting to understand. So I'm going to give you kind of a breakthrough concept, and there's a lot of pioneering neuroscience that is backing this up. But the basic idea, the brain-mind dynamic, given a computer terminology, is that everyone knows a computer has hardware, it's a motherboard, and it has also software and operating system. If you didn't know what a computer was, you saw it working, you thought, oh, this mechanical hardware is producing what I see on the screen. You didn't know, right? There's current going through the mechanical hardware, and you think, oh, this mechanical hardware is doing it. If you really didn't know, it was software and an operating system. But now that you do, it's no problem understanding that, hey, there's a completely separate components here, separate entities. So the brain is like a biological motherboard hardware, and the mind is the operating system that runs and rewires the brain. Completely separate components working together. That's an important understanding. The difference is because mechanical hardware, if the hardware becomes outdated and it can't take the stronger operating system software, right? That's why you got to check the phone and check the computer, because the operating system, right, they keep upgrading it, the software, they keep upgrading it, and the hardware is no longer good enough to run the operating system software, okay? And so you have to check the hardware and get better hardware. So if you're not checking your brain is getting upgraded, and your brain is getting rewired. And of course, the adolescents are getting their brains wired much more so than adults. You know, it takes more and more energy to rewire your brain the older you get. So the idea is that you have the mind rewiring the brain, and that's why when you come to a new subject or doing something new, it feels much harder, because it is an enormous amount of information, and it's trying to go through a biological hardware that is not capable. And so it has to be making more neural connections. And athletes talk about that when they say, oh, the game really got faster. When they go from high school to college, and college to pros, and then they say it's slowing down. Well, the game didn't slow down. It's because their brain is now being rewired to be able to withstand the amount of data going through the brain. So part of the rewiring of the brain is that it depends on how it gets wired. So the way I see it, there's just a dual outcome. The brain is either wired for conformity or for creativity. It's just a dual process. It's a binary process. It can be a little bit for conformity and creativity. It can be a lot for conformity and creativity, but it's one or the other. So every thought, every word, every action, the mind is wiring your brain. So thoughts, not as much, words, even more, actions, even more. And that's where you have psychology they call growth mindset. If you're engaging in kind of low ideas and low actions, and low language, you don't have a growth mindset. If you're engaging with ideas and thinking about vision of what you want to do, how you want to do it, questioning all these kind of things that we see as creative, you gain a growth mindset, which just means you can take more information and combine it in different ways. I have a good friend of mine who was marketing, who was on the board, and we had lunch for 10 years, and he had a stroke about a year ago, and I had a lunch with him, and he said, yeah, a third of my brain was dark. It's like a third of his brain is not working. And also neuroscience has found one of the reasons they find that the mind is different is because they know that memories are not located in any one place in the brain. So a third of his brain is dark, and I'm talking to him, and he's just fine. feel. It's just, sometimes, thinking slow, sometimes I don't remember things as much. And it's like a third of his brain is not working. It's because as a marketer, he used to be marketing at Renaissance, a lot. He was director of marketing, $1 billion company. So when he was younger, he was one part of the team that made it happen. So very at the top end of a creative person. And he's got enough neural connections that the information for his life, he won't be able to be as creative as he was, but he's got enough neural connections that the information that his mind has, which wasn't lost when a third of his brain, his mechanical, biological hardware was damaged, it still has enough capacity to go through. So this is if somebody that's not creative, that's was been wired for conformity, had a third of the brain, maybe a fifth of the brain go dark, they lose the ability to speak, the ability to lift the spoon, and so this is part of having more neural connections. I don't view a question as just a request for information. A question is the most powerful metaphysical tool a human has because it opens a place in your mind for information and answers to fit. And it's really education in the future has to be done through questions. And you wonder, one of the reasons why the arts are so powerful is because the entire time you're doing art, whether it's drawing, whether it's drama, whether it's music, the individual is in continuous question mode. But if you're not in continuous question mode, like in a continuous flow of questions, then you don't care. Are you speaking along with everyone else? What everyone else is playing? Are you in tune? What are you drawing? You won't care. You have to have questions. So you're in continuous question mode. And that's one of the most powerful things that you do. And the arts, kind of at the beginning is drawing, then you have drama, then in terms of what is the most powerful, stimulating, and then at the top you have music. When you question, again, you're opening your mind for information a bit. You think, does that really work? Have somebody just talk to you for 2 minutes straight, just telling you about what they're going to do, and then ask the question, okay, what are you going to do tomorrow? And then they can talk to you. You will remember significantly more after you ask the question, because now information is there, and it's integrating not just with remembering, but with a lot of other things. Again, the questioning is allowing the mind to more forcefully rewire the brain. It's about creativity, and creativity is going to be the most important skill set in the future for any human, because you're going to have technology now that you already can see with AI, on computing, big data, anything that you can remember and memorize, AI is going to beat you at. AI is beating doctors from Johns Hopkins at analyzing disease because it can read 30,000 articles, which doctors can't. It's obviously beating things like driving, it's beating humans at a lot of things. And you have to really ask, from a standpoint of U.S. education, what do we do to make a student successful? And if it's not memorizing information, which Einstein said over a century ago, there's no point in memorizing anything you can look up. That's a century ago. So you have really U.S. education in that sense is over a century behind. So if you're talking about creativity, why is creativity that important? In the future, the technology is going to be so strong and so fast that you're either going to have the creativity to use that technology as a tool, or you are going to be made obsolete by that same technology. There's no two ways about it. And so even at the very basic level now, with Google Prompt, right? Just that little window. To me, that's a window to the world. For any creative person, that is a miracle, that little bar. For a non-creative person, that's a prison window. What are they going to do with it? What are you going to put into it? If you're not interested, if you're not creative, well, it's a prison window. You are educating not with information, which is what school thinks. I'm going to make you memorize and regurgitate information. You are stimulating creativity and wiring in the brain. So once you understand what you're doing in education, it becomes a different, the objective, the goal. Once the goal and objective starts changing to be more realistic to what's going on, then you can have better education policy. What's the goal? If we understand, okay, you're going to be an obsolete and human if you don't have creativity in your future, so the goal is to develop the skill of creativity. That's the goal, right? So the arts do that most powerfully. So, analogy, if you're running with a football, you gotta run toward the goal line. The act that does the opposite, the act that the mind is wiring the brain for conformity, one of the strongest acts to do that, which is something that will make you fail in the future, brain wiring conformity, is memorizing information and then regurgitating it on a test for grade. So you're actually running the opposite way, the absolute opposite way in everything else this education does. So in essence, in the arts, you're running forward, then you go back to class, you're running backwards. So you're running in circles in U.S. education. And again, you can only understand that if you know, here's what the goal is. We have to understand where the goal line is, for education. Just because it's been done for thousands of years where humans have memorized information, and so education has continued it. But humans have memorized information for thousands of years, always for the goal of survival and success. And so if you memorize information on how to grow crops, how to make weapons, how to do this, you didn't have books, you didn't have internet, obviously. So you memorize information, you're always using that for survival and success. And education, starting, 100 years ago, turned that into, let's just grade you on that information. Now, when you talk about creativity, that's a very amorphous word. People have lots of flowery language, and you wonder, well, how do you know if somebody's flowery language is real? In business, there's a term and a phrase that says, if you can't explain what you're doing as a process, then you don't know what you're doing. And so a process is the way you can analyze if something is legit. And I go further. I say, if you can't explain what you're talking about as a process, then you don't know what you're talking about. So when you hear about creativity, can you explain what creativity is a process? My definition of creativity is when an individual understands the current paradigm, sees the vision of the future paradigm, and is working toward that paradigm in a constantly changing environment. Because we have to understand what makes a human creative and what makes AI not creative. Because AI is not creative. AI is a very, very powerful laptop. People might draw something, oh, it's creative. AI might draw something, oh, it's creative. So you have to differentiate, because the students are looking to you and saying, why would this be creative and why is AI not creative? Which in essence is going to be the fundamental question, is why as a human am I relevant in this future age? Say, for instance, give you an example, you have AI helping drive cars, AI is going to help land planes. You go, well, that's also creative if somebody's doing it, but the environment's not changing because you have the wind, it could be stronger or weaker wind, but the environment's not changing. Let's say the plane loses a wing. That is an environment that's not changing. And there's actually a video of that where there was a guy flying the plane and he just lost the wing, like it fell off. The plane was just wild, had one wing. And you could see the pilot is trying to do something, and he's figuring out, if I do this, what happens? If I do that, what's happening? So this is like the pinnacle of creativity, because if you're not creative, you die. Calculations for that would be so astronomical out there. I don't care if you have quantum computing and the best AI, it could not do that, because that's a changing environment. So, you say, and of course, to a small degree, you have the Tesla driving cars and what have you. Well, the environment's not changing. It's still the road. That's why you can zonk out completely while driving and be at your destination and not even remember how you got there, because all you're doing is looking for changes. You're not being creative. Now, let's say there's a pothole, snowstorm, hailstorm, big truck in the middle of the road, and you have to figure out how to be creative to survive. Okay, AI would crash. It doesn't have enough ability, but people that are creative figure out what are my options. So this is kind of the key. You're working in a constantly changing environment. And for that, you need two things that AI doesn't have. That's intuition and emotion. That's a biological trait. the emotion and intuition. So emotion is something that the mechanical Harvard and half AI doesn't have. And it's something that the arts are continually working with. In US education, teachers, administrators, oh no, we don't want emotion, we don't want kids acting out, this and that. But you need to be able to teach adolescents to control emotions, to use the emotions as tools. Because emotion is also its own separate entity. And I talk about that on my site, where emotion is a completely independent entity that is working with the biological body. My perspective is no, emotion is an entity that's working through neurochemicals. And it's not just working through neurochemicals, but emotion also works through vibrations. So I consider emotion to have two ways of working, one with neurochemicals. And so if you get mad at somebody, if you're interacting with people, emotion is within the neurochemicals, and that's why emotion stays with you. So if you get angry, you stay angry for like a long time. Get happy, stay happy for a long time, because emotion is continuing to be attached to neurochemicals. With vibrations, with music, it's fleeting. It comes and goes. That's why you could go to a movie and be affected by emotion with the music, because the music, slower overtones, the more pure bass, the higher, faster love bass, and everything in between. And composers now understand how to use that music, and so it's vibrational. So you can go everything from extreme love to extreme hate, and then leave completely neutral. And so that's why Hollywood is using symphonic music in all the movies, because the dialogue, go to Star Trek or Avengers, the dialogue in itself is horror, right? So if you didn't have the music, you would have no context. You would have no emotional context. You literally would not have a movie experience, because the music is what gives the emotion, and it connects the screen to your emotions. And so emotion is, as I said, from my paradigm, a completely separate entity that you need to, as an adolescent, learn how to use. Just like you have internet, phone, shortened to iPhone, energy, motion, shortened to emotion. So emotion is the energy behind what I see as the physical world, the kind of quantum systems. And Einstein said that the more he learns about physics, the more he wants to engage and learn about metaphysics. And so the main thing to remember is that emotion is not just a neurobiological function. It is its own component. It has its own rules, and you know that it has its own rules and processes because composers are able to compose music to navigate your emotions. Playwrights are able to compose ways of humans interacting in order to generate certain emotions. So there are processes. That's something that's really important to teach adolescents in how to use their emotions. Because if they don't know that they grow up without knowing how to use emotions, then not only can they not use that for creativity, but they're not going to be as adept at using emotions when they need to interact with people. The tangible aspect, the takeaway here, is the statement that in the future, the curriculum that engages students in the arts will be the most important curriculum in U.S. education. Yes?
I think we all know this innately because I've spent the last week with my 1-year-old granddaughter, and it's been awesome. But how much singing we all do with her, how much playing of instruments, and watching for her to respond to that, and then hearing her sing, and hearing her shaking the instruments. It's so obvious that brain is on fire, that wiring is going on.
Yes.
And, so it would be so embarrassing how much I've danced, for her and with her and all these other adults, because we know that's the way to excite her, interest her, get her creative mind going, and wire that brain.
Yeah, absolutely. So all I'm trying to do is give a reason, because you're saying, oh, this happens, and the administration and the parents are going to go, Okay, more stat, right? Or what have you. Anybody have questions on? Yes.
Given, we're in pre-service, you're talking to the teachers who focus on all that. So a lot of what you're saying here is totally.
Right.
So could you give a little summary, what, you're there to give us a message, what do you want us to do?
So all I'm trying to do is what I started with is talking about that tip of the iceberg and just tell everyone in the future, art's going to be the most important curriculum in youth education for your success, because they are the ones that stimulate creativity, and creativity is going to be the most fundamental skill. I mean, that's in a nutshell. And the one other statement that I use is I say, in the future, like I said, you are either going to be creative enough to use all the technology as tools, or you're going to be made obsolete by that same technology. And so anybody that education hires to come in and say, oh, we need more technology, does not know what they're talking about. It's BS. Because even Steve Jobs said it's not about technology. It's about the ability to use it as tools, and that is only going to be creativity, right? And so at that point, you change the direction of the conversation, rather than who can learn and memorize this information and have a higher grade on the test. Because all of youth education, and I've talked to foundations, they're all so happy when next year 3% of the students had, more, a higher test score. And so if that's your goal, right? Great, you're reaching that goal, you're going. But if you're saying what's going to make you successful and relevant as a human being, that's completely the opposite. So you have to have a framework for what is the goal of education. And so as long as it's memorizing information to regurgitate on a test, it's going backward. If you're saying what is going to make you more creative, ability to use those creative skills, then that's a different conversation. Yes.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that where you're looking at a world of standardization in education, where everybody's trying, wanting to say that's what the expectation are. Here, the last battleground is knowing that you cannot standardize the arts by education. So that you have to make sure students know that the creativity part is the essential.
Right, students and parents, and the kids are pretty good BS leaders, and so if they're seeing things, changing, and they don't see, because they're investing after a certain point, like in high school, 4 years in high school, college, they're investing their time. They want to know that they're going to be relevant, that this time investment is going to be relevant. And like I talked to a group of IT students at the University of Nebraska, and they're like scared out of their minds, because they know that, they're doing the software, but Apple, Oracle, Google comes out with apps that starts creating software for students, because AI can do that, and then all of a sudden they're no longer relevant. So they're going, okay, what's going to make us relevant? Because even you think, oh, they're in IT, but you have to go, is this a creative thing? One of the things that you can say to answer to your question is that in the future, every job will be where you go and they're going to tell you to do something new. Because if they have to tell you what to do, you're not going to be needed, because AI is going to be able to do it. So there is nothing other than the arts that prepares a student to go and do something new.
So that's something that we can say to our students and to our families, is that the artistic endeavors are what teaches you to think on your feet and to go into uncharted territory.
Right, amongst all the other things without having to, but you at least have a bigger foundation, like what's happening with the mind and brain. In 10 years, there's prediction that a third of the workforce is going to be obsolete. Elon Musk predicts over half. I believe him. He's on the cutting edge of AI. So and you look at AI when they're talking to them. Google thinks that one of their AI has become sentient. It's like you are having a revolution, and you can't have a system that is a century behind. And if you think about it, you go, wow, we're not a century behind. Well, take a surgeon from 100 years ago and put them into a surgery room today, they'll be completely lost. They won't even be qualified to be a nurse. You put a teacher in front of a room teaching information from 100 years ago to today, teaching information and replace the books with laptops, and it's really darn close. So it is a century behind. All I'm looking for is what is going to be a system and a process that is going to empower the student to be successful. And so if I'm saying things in very black and white ways, it's only because I feel that it needs to be said that there has to be this clear differentiation between what empowers the mind to be more creative, which is the arts, CAPS, experiential learning, and what goes the opposite direction. And so that's why I talked about that the process of memorizing information to learn has been done for tens of thousands of years in the past. So I'm saying that process is no longer a viable process to make the students successful. The idea is when you're talking to parents and talking to students, this gives you another tool to talk to parents, administrators, why the arts are not just something they're treated like a cute poodle. Oh, really nice, that's arts, but it is a tool. It's a tool for your success. Even when I was in school, and even now I know there's a lot of students that the parents are going, okay, there's the arts, and then there's another, higher math class or higher this, they drop arts. How many of you had that? A lot. And so if the student and the parent does not understand that the arts are more important than this other class, then they'll keep dropping them. And so, yeah, it's a very bold and aggressive stance to say it's going to be the most important. I got it at this time. When technology changes, everyone's going to be looking around and say, okay, what do we do? But if at least you push people to go, it's the most important, and you get them to go, it's just as important if we're there. Yes.
So I'll try and keep this quick. So I taught a family a number of years ago. The mom is the admissions director for MIT for Kansas and the 4 states around us. And she would come and talk to my class. Her 3 kids all were in my program. So Tammy Karsten is her name. She's still the admissions director. So she would come to my class and say, hi, I'm Tammy Karsten, and if you apply to MIT, I'm the one that decides if you get in. And she would say, when I look at your transcript, if I see that you drop an arts class your senior year to take AP Physics 5, she says, I'm going to take your application to MIT and throw it in the trash. Because now you're just like everybody else. She said, I need creative, problem-solving people that are dedicated. And she was very blunt about it. She said, you can just go to K-State with everybody else. She said, there's nothing wrong with that. You can be a normal kid. But if you want to be...
That sounds insulting to the educators.
I'm just the messenger. She was the one that would say it. But she would say there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being that. But if you want to be on the cutting edge, if you want to be at the top, if you want to be at a top school, you need an arts-based education. This is 10 years ago that I taught these kids. And so the top universities realize it.
Yeah, they do. But they don't quite understand why. They know that all the kids are more creative. I have clients who hire, and they have like 2 equal resumes. They always pick the one that's a musician as well, because they know they can solve problems, which is going back to what we talked about, do something new. That's what it is. I mean, do something new. Figure, because when the problem comes up, there's nobody standing above you telling you, here's how you fix it. You got to do something new.